What if I told you there was a secret code that defines what we find beautiful? A single, mysterious number that seems to shape everything, from the vastness of the cosmos right down to the smallest details of life.
It's a pretty wild thought, isn't it? The idea that there's a hidden formula for beauty and that you can find it everywhere, if you just know what you're looking for. So let's go looking. The story starts on a truly cosmic scale. People who believe in this number say it's literally etched into the fabric of space itself, guiding the elegant spiral arms of faraway galaxies.
And we're told you can find it right here on Earth, even in what looks like pure, beautiful chaos, like Hokusai's famous Great Wave. And that we humans have been tapping into this code for thousands of years, using it to build things of breathtaking beauty, like the Parthenon in Athens. So, what is this mysterious number?
All right, let's pull back the curtain. We are, of course, talking about the one and only golden ratio. At its heart, it's a very specific mathematical proportion. And it's earned some pretty epic names over the years that really show you how much people revered it. Phi, and my personal favorite, the divine proportion. I mean, come on.
Okay, now don't let the math diagram scare you off, because the idea is actually incredibly simple and elegant. Just picture a line. You cut it into two pieces, a long one and a short one. You've hit the golden ratio when, get this, the ratio of the whole line to the long part is the exact same as the ratio of the long part to the short part. It's this perfect repeating harmony.
And that unique relationship gives us this number, phi. It starts with 1.618 and then it just keeps going forever without ever repeating. It's kind of like pi, you know? But instead of being about circles, this number is all about perfect proportion.
But this is way more than just a cool number for mathematicians. The real magic, the reason it's so legendary, is because of its incredible connection to the patterns we see all over the natural world.
And that connection really snaps into focus when you look at the famous Fibonacci sequence. You know this one. 0, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8. You just add the last two numbers to get the next. Well, here's the trick. If you take any number in the sequence and divide it by the one before it, the answer gets ridiculously close to phi. The further you go, the closer it gets. It's one of the most beautiful connections in all of math.
And check this out. This is what that math looks like in real life. On the left, you've got the abstract spiral, drawn using squares based on the Fibonacci numbers. And on the right, a plant. It's the exact same pattern. This isn't just for show, by the way. This arrangement helps the plant's leaves get the most sunlight possible. It's not magic. It's just biology using incredibly efficient and beautiful mathematics.
So when you see these amazing patterns popping up all over nature, it kind of makes sense that we humans would want to get in on the action, right? That we'd want to use this divine proportion in our own creations. For centuries, the thinking has been pretty straightforward. If this ratio is fundamental to nature's beauty, then using it in our art and our buildings should create things that just feel right to us, balanced, harmonious, and naturally pleasing to the eye.
So let's take a look. Here's Michelangelo's masterpiece, The Creation of Adam. Now watch what happens when you overlay that golden spiral. Wow, look at that. The composition seems to flow perfectly along that curve, leading your eye right to the most important point in the whole painting, that tiny gap between the fingers of God and Adam.
And it's not always about spirals. You can also create a compositional grid based on the ratio. Here it is laid over a self-portrait by the great Leonardo da Vinci. See how key features, like his eye and his nose, seem to land right on those lines? It gives the whole piece this incredible sense of structure and power.
And listen, this wasn't some fringe idea. We're talking about scientific giants. The astronomer Johannes Kepler called this ratio a precious jewel, one of geometry's two great treasures, putting it right up there with the Pythagorean theorem. That's how fundamental he believed it was. But we have to hit the brakes here, because this is where our story takes a really critical turn. After all this seemingly perfect evidence, we have to ask ourselves, is the golden ratio really this universal code? Or have we just been seeing what we want to see?
So let's go back and take another look at some of those classic examples. How well did these claims actually hold up when you really start to scrutinize them?
And this right here gets to the absolute heart of the debate. On the one hand, you have all these popular claims about the pyramids, the Parthenon, the Mona Lisa. But on the other, you have scholars who've done the measurements. And what they've found is, well, the Parthenon's dimensions don't actually fit. There's zero evidence the ancient Egyptians used this math for the pyramids. And maybe the most damning part,
Leonardo da Vinci himself never once wrote about using the golden ratio in his paintings.
In fact, Stanford mathematician Keith Devlin is pretty blunt about it. He says, quote, "The entire story about the Greeks and golden ratio seems to be without foundation. It looks like the story is just more powerful than the proof, and this idea of the ancient Greeks using it might be a much more recent invention."
So where does all this leave us? Is the whole thing just one big myth? Well, like most things in life, the real answer is a little more complicated and a lot more interesting.
So here's the takeaway. The golden ratio is absolutely a real and fascinating mathematical constant. That's fact. Its connection to the Fibonacci sequence and those incredible patterns in nature, that is undeniable. And yes, some modern artists like Salvador Dali and Le Corbusier for sure used it deliberately in their work. The fiction part starts to creep in when we try to apply it backwards to all these historical things where the evidence just isn't there. It seems to be a classic case of our brains being just a little too good at finding patterns we expect to find.
And that leaves us with one final big question. Is the golden ratio a universal law of beauty, a code that's hardwired into the cosmos itself? Or is its real power in the story we tell about it, a captivating pattern that our minds are just predisposed to find and maybe even create everywhere we look?